for two. Kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two. Sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this. Multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What is going on, guys, and welcome to COVID Crazy Personal League Podcast. I am your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, we are here to break down this 10-team Dynasty League. And here tonight to help me with that, none other than Mr. Brian Ford. He is, of course, the host of the Dynasty Saturday Night 5 right here on Going for Two Live. He's also the host of the Dynasty Fever podcast, and you can follow him at FFJunkie_. What's up, Brian?
Hey, how we doing? Looking forward to this PLP. Haven't done one in a while. And listen, if there's a song that gets you hyped to do a podcast, it's that one.
It's definitely that one.
Yes, I enjoy it because I don't know if y'all have it on your side, but on the host side, I can see all your little windows. And whenever I go live, I can see y'all bopping to the music on the little windows. So, I love it. All right. Also joining us tonight, Shane Barrett. He is the host of the Poly Playoff Tournament and podcast and contributor for RotoHeat.com. Former Going for Two member, and you can follow him at FFShaneB. What's up, Shane?
What's up, Jeff? Thanks for having me again. I always love doing these, so I appreciate you letting me stay on. And just because you brought it up in my intro, Poly's Playoff Features is my new podcast talking about people that have played in Poly's playoff and have been affected by Alzheimer's. So trying to let you guys get a little insight into Alzheimer's and fantasy football and the people that you know from the community. So,
well, Shane, since you brought it up, what is Poly's playoff tournament?
Thank you. It is a tournament to end Alzheimer's. We participate in the Walk to End Alzheimer's every year, so it's our biggest fundraiser for that. It's a super flex, non-tight end premium tiered PPR tournament. And this year, half the field is going to be best ball, half the field is going to be a managed league. So if you want to participate but haven't felt like you could manage another league and setting a lineup, you can actually do that through best ball this year.
I'm looking forward to the best ball side of things.
Yeah, a lot of people are, I think.
That's awesome. It's a great tournament, guys. If you've never been in there, definitely hit up Shane on Twitter. He can tell you how to get in there. All right. So I think we've done this league a couple of times, I believe, or at least some of the guys that are in this league have done these PLPs before, but I'll explain it to the rest of the audience that's tuning in. What is a personal league podcast? So for the next hour or so, we are going to talk about their league. It is a 10-team Dynasty league. I gave the rosters to these guys, and they ranked them in the order that they wished to have taken over. So if they were taking over one of these teams, we're ranking them in the way that we'd want to take them over. So not necessarily best to worst, just kind of teams that we find interesting, whether they got lots of draft capital, they got players that we like, whatever the case may be. We then create a ranking based on those rankings, and we will count them down tonight from 10 to 1. And then each of these guys have been assigned 5 teams each. They will talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, maybe some ideas on how to improve their team. They have already had their rookie draft, so maybe talk about their draft a little bit on what they got from the rookie draft. Just anything in general they want to talk about. But let's go ahead and jump right into number 10. Number 10 team was a pretty big disparity. Now, I will say, as we go through these rankings, some of these teams were very, very hard to rank. We've got some pretty big disparities in the rankings, and quite frankly, I think all these teams are built pretty well, and any of them could have fallen anywhere in these rankings. It was hard to split hairs, but the number 10 team ranked as high as number 6, ranked as low as number 10, and the team is They Called It a Comeback. And Shane, this is your squad, so give us your thoughts here.
Yeah, so this guy must be a Kim Kardashian fan with that team name, but uh, first
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
glance.
whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm sorry. No. We cannot. LL Cool J.
I do know what Shane's talking about. There's a viral. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Brian. There's a viral
Parks and
TikTok
Rec,
going around.
right?
No,
Yeah,
no, never seen.
it's the outtakes from The Office, I believe. Right, Shane?
I think it's Parks and Rec. It's
Parks and Rec. Yeah, yeah.
what's his name? Chris
I can't
Pratt.
think.
Chris
Yeah,
Pratt.
Chris Pratt. Yeah, it's pretty hilarious if you've not looked it up. I'm sure if you.
Oh, I watched a lot of Parks and Rec. I don't know why I didn't see that.
All right, Shane. Let's back
Okay,
to football.
I'll continue. Sorry, but yeah. So the starting lineup for this team is solid, but not necessarily one of my favorites. And to Jeff's point, like, sorry to this team, but there was a clear 10 for me, and there was a clear 1 and 2. Teams 3 through 9 were a cluster. Like, I struggled extremely to rank those teams. But this team was pretty easy for me to put at 10. And the reason for that is outside of the starting lineup, I don't love the depth pieces that you have. So you've got Jared Goff, Kyron Williams, Shad White, Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, Jordan Addison, Eckler, Brian Robinson, and Aaron Rodgers is your starting lineup. Eckler and Robinson being in the same backfield now sucks for you. And then you have a QB3 on your roster. I just saw that. I think I missed that when I initially ranked them. And it is someone that I like, and I know a lot of people don't, but that's Bo Nix, but you've got him on your taxi squad. Other than that, you don't have a QB3. And then I'm not the hugest Keon Coleman fan, who you obviously got in the rookie draft. And your other depth is still super old with Odell Beckham Jr., Michael Thomas, Mike Williams. Zay Jones isn't even on a team right now. Curtis Samuel has some upside. Wandale has some upside. And then your backup tight end is Gerald Everett, and he is now on Chicago, probably behind Cole Kmet. So it looks like you were kind of a victim of circumstance of the offseason where the depth that you had got replaced pretty quickly, either through the draft or through free agency, to where it just got watered down. And then when you scroll down, your first draft pick is 2025 second, and then your next draft pick isn't until the 2026 second round. So you don't have a ton of draft picks to really kind of get younger in the areas that you need to get younger and add those valuable depth pieces. So I just didn't love this team when ranking them.
So I'll jump in here because I was the guy that had them ranked at 6. I actually liked them a little bit more than Shane did, even more than Brian did. And again, this goes back to not being best or worst about teams we want to take over. And looking at this team, if I was to take it over, I think there's enough pieces here that I could make some moves to get this team in the right direction. Because what I do when I do, not a full-on rebuild, but just more of a retool, you look at those two running backs, Kyron Williams, Rashad White, two guys that if you're big into Dynasty, their value is high right now, but a lot of us expect that value to come down. And those are two guys I would be looking to move to.
Can I jump in real quick? My concern, I agree with you on Rashad White, where his value is high, and I don't think his will drop as much. But Kyron's, I feel like, is already dropped because of Blake Corum being drafted. And that's like trying to sell him feels hard right now.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that maybe his value is a little bit depressed, but I do still think people look at his usage and think, how could they potentially go away from a guy like that? And when I rebuild teams, running backs are the first things to go because they're the easiest to replace. They're also, their value spikes and then comes down very quickly. So a guy like Kyron Williams and Rashad White, both of them are kind of in that same category. Rashad White was not a very efficient runner. He got all of his value through the pass, and then the Bucs go out and get probably one of the best pass catching running backs in the draft this year in Bucky Irving. So is he going to take away any of that passing ability from Rashad White? I don't know. Maybe he won't. But it's just funny to me that the one thing that Rashad White did very well that made his fantasy value so high, the Bucs went out and drafted a guy that does the same thing. So is his value going to drop? So for me, I'm looking at this team like, okay, I've got some older guys like Calvin Ridley, Austin Eckler is getting up there. Obviously, probably maybe 1 or 2 more years left. Personally, I'm looking to move those 2 running backs to a team that's a contender. I'm probably not moving them right now. Probably as we get closer to the season, when we start looking at roster construction and you look at who's contenders and who's not, I might try to sell at least one of those guys, if not both, to try to get younger. Try to get younger receivers, try to get more draft picks for next year, whatever the case may be. And that's why I had this team 6, not because I think that they're the 6th best team, because I think they've got pieces that I could use to then, like I said, not rebuild, because I think there's some good pieces there. Like you mentioned, Jordan Addison's there. I still like Deebo Samuel. I'm a 49ers fan, so I'm a little biased on that sense, but I do like this roster, and I do think there's some things that we can do. Now, we've done these PLPs for a long time. Sometimes the 10th team is so bad that they're like, what can you do? There's nothing to sell on this team. You have nothing. Whereas I feel like this team still has pieces that can be moved to make some more moves. Brian, you've been quiet there, Brian. Let me get your opinion on this team real quick before we get to the next team. Any thoughts here on team number 10?
Pretty similar thoughts to what have been expressed before. We've got that question in the chat about, are they a contender? Should they rebuild? That sort of thing. I looked at this team and said they're destined for the dreaded middle. And here's the thing, like the 10-team leagues are interesting because everybody's got a pretty good roster, right? And the waiver wires are pretty good and that sort of thing. And so I don't know that full rebuilds are even necessary in a 10-team league. And in fact, I'm trying to move toward my leagues towards like always trying to be in the mix while still also adding youth and capital, like kind of like, a balance kind of thing. So that's just a long way of saying, no, I wouldn't blow it up. I'm going to maybe slightly disagree with Jeff here. There's another way to look at having the running backs on your roster, and that is get them off now. Like, even if it's a small price, like, or if you're taking 85 cents on the dollar, like, do you want to carry a couple of those guys through the off season where they may, break an ankle in training camp,
Fair point.
Yeah,
fair point. And I will say too that Shane mentioned Keon Coleman and not being high in Keon Coleman. Everybody who follows me knows that I'm driving the train of the Keon Coleman hype train. So I've loved Keon Coleman from the beginning before the draft, and I even love him even more now. So the fact you have him on your roster might have bumped you up a spot or two. So,
and that's probably what bumped you down for me too. But I do love his interviews. I will give him that.
And me being a middler on Keon, I'm in the middle. So here you go, right?
All right, good stuff. All right, let's get to number 9.
Number 9.
The number 9 team ranked as high as 5 and as low as 10. So again, another big disparity here. And that team is TK Wood. And Brian, this is your squad. Take it away.
Yeah, so there are things to like I said, just about every squad here in a 10-team league. You've got solid starters. There's a little bit of age, I think, in that starting lineup. Quarterback depth could be better. Running back depth is kind of meh. You have like quantity, but I don't know that I love those players, right? Those are the types of guys that I would be looking to probably move if I could this time of year. And draft capital is not terrible, but not great. And that's something that I like to look for when thinking about, do I want to take over this team? Because that's essentially like cash, right? Think of the players as products that are already bought, and then the picks are cash. I want cash. It's more liquid. It gives me more flexibility. And so, I would probably look to add draft capital on this team. I would see what I could do about getting younger and grabbing some picks, but like at the same time, not necessarily go all in and try to do things in a pretty balanced way, right? So if I look at this roster, just identifying some guys that I might move off of, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, let's see here, Gus Edwards, Alexander Madison. You're not going to get anything for A.J. Dillon. He's probably cuttable unless something weird happens in camp. Zamir White, I don't know if the scoring on the scoring is, we did get the scoring, is if it's half PPR or standard, Zamir White ain't helping you much straight line runner, first and second down guy, not much pass catching in the profile. That's why they drafted Dylan Laube. Tyler Boyd. These are the kinds of people that like I would get a younger player plus a sprinkle on top to kind of freshen things up a little bit, and maybe you land in the 6th spot, which is, hey, you're in the playoffs, and once you're in the dance, you can maybe do something. You kind of want to be in the dance because it increases your chances. You can always trade for the higher draft picks and stuff after the dance, right? So that's kind of the direction that I'm looking at with this team. Again, with the 10-team leagues, the rankings are pretty flat. Like there's for me, there was a clear 2 or 3 at the top, and then pretty much flat, and then like a little bit of dip there at the bottom. So when we're looking at these teams now that are starting to creep up further, there's going to be more mixes in our rankings. Like we had, I think, 10, 5, and 9 on this, right? So they're pretty wide disparity, right? That's all I got on that.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm looking at some of the running backs you mentioned and just thinking how this owner reacted to the free agency period, right? Because first, Josh Jacobs gets signed. He's like, oh, crap, there goes my shares of Aaron Jones. But then Aaron Jones gets moved, and he's happy again. And then we go through the draft, and the Raiders don't draft the running backs. Now you've got, Josh Jacobs in a good spot, Aaron Jones in a decent spot, and you got Zamir White. So you end up with 3 running backs there. When at different points in the offseason, you might have thought that they'd be competing for the same job. So I do like that worked out in their favor. I had this team at 9, and I think for some of the reasons that Brian's already kind of pointed out. Now, Shane, you're on the opposite end here. You had him at 5, right there in the middle of the pack. What were your things you liked about this team?
This is one of those teams that I really struggled to rank. So I think I just stuck him at 5 in the middle because I couldn't decide which direction to really, really move them. I like what Brian mentioned on, like, you do have running back depth through quantity, but not necessarily quality. But you have some cloudy situations that could break your way, like Gus Edwards, Alexander Madison, Zamir White, Jerome Ford, even if Nick Chubb somehow isn't an alien and comes back healthy. And you probably got a favorite player bump in me for Baker Mayfield. But then I think it was kind of sneaky too. You've got Hollywood Brown down on your bench. He'd be somebody that once the season comes around, I'd very easily be willing to start. Either put him in at wide receiver and slide Kirk down to a flex spot. Maybe slide Tyjae Spears out for week 1 until we see what that Tennessee backfield looks like. But this team was truly just kind of like right in the middle for me. Didn't really know what to do. You didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Hollywood Brown, and he's a guy that it seems to be almost like his career has gone this route because he had the same issue when D-Hop got suspended. If anything happens with Rashee Rice, any kind of suspension at all, Hollywood Brown's value for those first whatever amount of games he gets suspended for is going to be super high.
This may be hot takey, Jeff, but I don't necessarily know how much the Rashee Rice suspension is going to matter. I think Hollywood Brown could still come in and be the one, even if Rice is there. Now, obviously, they'll probably be behind Kelsey, but we saw Kelsey slow down last year, so maybe one of them steps up more. And I really think that Hollywood Brown's kind of being slept on.
Yeah, and you could be right. But as an owner of Hollywood Brown, if he has a couple big games, I think I'm selling him. Yeah, I'm selling him.
So just real quick. So the KCAT 1111 in the chat, they're talking about Team RB2, and it's full of them. And I kind of want to bring that to what Shane was saying about you want to buy ambiguous, murky backfields and be anti-fragile so that if something happens, they break your way. I'm very much, I've just kind of conceded to the reality in both the NFL and fantasy of sort of what zero RB is for us now. And for me, and I'm not disagreeing with Shane, I'm adding that we need to have that balance of, I want that zero RB build, but there's a couple pieces there that I might want to move off of because I don't want all of them on my roster. you
Yeah.
know, like a Madison or a Dylan, like get him off my roster.
I, am I the only one that'd be comfortable selling Josh Jacobs at this point?
He's a
His value-
candidate too. I mean, there's people who think he's going to be a solid bounce back and all that sort of thing. And there's people who say, well, you know, he's going to, you know, get you those 3.2 yards a carry and some goal line work. And Marshawn Lloyd's going to get the explosive touches. And, you know, and by the end, you know, the coaching staff has praised Lloyd, talked about him as an Aaron Jones clone and that he's going to get a lot of touches. What if by the end of the year, Josh Jacobs is what we think AJ Dillon is now, and Marshawn Lloyd's in the Aaron Jones role by the end of the year? That's a case to make for trading Jacobs before we get the camp buzz that says that's going to happen.
Yeah,
fair point. Shane, I want to go back to when I first turned this over to you. You know, I said, why do you like this team so much? I really wanted you to like unmute yourself and just say Baker Mayfield and then go back on mute.
I should have.
I know how much you love Baker Mayfield. So.
I should have done that.
Yeah. All right, let's get to team number 8.
Number 8.
Number 8 team ranked as high as 6, ranked as low as 9. It is Team Spunk, all about TDs. Shane, this is your squad here. Give me your breakdown.
Yeah, so I was the guy that ranked you at 6, and here's why. This team has a lot of youth, and in Dynasty, that's always fun. The youth that you have, though, there are some question marks around it. Like your RB1 right now looks like it's Jonathan Brooks. That could be amazing for you. It could also be a dumpster fire. Brock Bowers, you draft talent, not necessarily situation, and Brock Bowers has that talent. You've got CeeDee Lamb and Puka Nacua, 2 top 10 Dynasty wide receivers for most people. And then your first flex is Devontae Adams. That's pretty solid. And then you've got 2 solid rookies in Xavier Worthy and Ladd McConkey. I don't have enough shares of Ladd McConkey in rookie drafts because of the way my picks have fallen or trades that I've made to go up and get other people. So I've missed out on Ladd, but I really, really love the landing spot for him and think that with the lack of talent around him, plus his ability to create separation through his route running, he'll be in a good spot. You've got your QB. So you've got 3 starting QBs. Actually, you've almost got 4 because you have the Giants room locked up if Daniel Jones goes out or Daniel Jones is it. And then your bench is full of rookies too. So Dylan Lobby, Will Shipley, Tyrone Tracy, Troy Franklin, Ricky Pearsall, Javon Baker, Romeo Dobbs is a 3rd-year player. Dontavian Wicks is a 2nd-year player. Quentin Johnston is roster fodder. He's trash, but he's got maybe opportunity. And then your taxi squad is all rookies. I really like the youth and the potential of this team. I don't necessarily know if you'd be a contender, but I really liked the build of this team. I have a similar dynasty team. It's also a 10-team league where I went productive struggle in the first year, and then my roster now is like Anthony Richardson, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bryce Young, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like I loaded up on rookies. So it seems like you took a similar strategy with this team, and it's always fun.
Yeah, I rank this team fairly low, but you know, this team is kind of what I call more bullets in the gun, right? I mean, they've tried to get as many young pieces as they could. You know, they have high-end young pieces. They got bottom of the totem pole type young pieces. But, you know, the thing about some of those, you know, bottom of the totem pole guys, it takes one injury away from getting some of these guys a chance, and then they can show what they can do. So having as many as they do gives them an opportunity to hopefully hit on 1 or 2. Now, I do wish there was a little bit more of the top-end talent. You mentioned Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, that's solid. But you mentioned the RB1 is Jonathan Brooks. The RB2, I guess, is Rico.
The RB depth is a huge concern.
Yeah.
And that's probably what pushed them down for me because I love running backs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that when I do, you know, sort of build a team, you know, up from being a bad team to a good team, having the good receivers and the good quarterback is where you want to start, and you build your running backs last. So in that sense, I do think he's doing it right. But yeah, I think it needs a little bit more of the veteran talent to sort of even this roster out. It's almost too young. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was one of my main concerns. Listen, as much as I want to do like a 6-7 round rookie draft, because I find the positive story for every one of these guys, you should have spent. I would have spent some of those picks on turning them into known quantities and players, right? So I didn't count the roster size plus taxi, but there are 13 rookies on that roster. Like that's got to be near 50% of the team, right? Like that's tough to do. I would have maybe tried to move some of those seconds and thirds, package with a player, and then tier up to a player while people had rookie fever and wanted to pick those guys. I love Wicks. I think he's the Green Bay receiver to have at cost. So find somebody who disagrees with me and likes Romeo Doubs better, and I would trade them, particularly because that offense is going to be very hard to figure out who hits week to week. Quarterback note that I had is it's quantity over quality. The person traded Daniel Jones for Aaron Jones, so they I think that was a good trade for both teams, and still wide range of outcomes with quarterback. It could be very good. It could be ugly. And I think that could make or break your season because you're relying so much on on rookies. I would spin off Miles Sanders for a third, see what I can get for Dubs. I'd probably take a second and a fourth, 2/3. Like I don't know, something for Quentin Johnston, because listen, there's a chance with that empty wide receiver room that he hits, and somebody's going to be willing to pay that price.
It's not me.
And if you're a seller who's willing to take that price, do it. You know, if you think that getting him off your roster now is better, then fine. You know, that's a decision too. So yeah, those are my main notes on that. Yeah.
All right, good stuff. All right, let's move to team number 7.
Number 7.
Number 7, another big disparity. As high as number 3, as low as number 10. It is Basement Warriors at Mafia 34. And Brian, this is your squad here.
Forgot to shout out someone with titties and spunk in their team names, probably doing similar activities to me after the podcast. So we're going to be talking about the Basement Warriors here, Mafia 34. I like the solid starters. I think we've got a pretty good 0 RB look. I think it leans that way. Pretty good tight end depth. The bench wide receivers could be better, especially in a 10-team league. I think the kind of the bench overall is a little meh, and I want to see better in a 10-team league. But we've got 2 firsts in the cupboard, so I love that. I would be careful with Devin Singletary, Keaton Mitchell, and Jaden Reed this year. So Singletary has a very good relationship with Daboll, and he's the best back, or at least the top back right now on the depth chart. But he's not an elite, dynamic, explosive player. I don't know that they figured out the offensive line. I think he's riding that surprise year in Houston, and could be the candidate for that's the 26-year-old that we squeezed as much as we could out of last year, and now he's starting to fall off a cliff. I think him and Zach Moss are gonna disappoint people, so be careful there. And with Keaton Mitchell, he's about to get Wally pipped by my boy Rasheen Ali. That was a really bad knee injury. It was fairly late in the season, and he was, I think, a UDFA to begin with, or 7th rounder. So it's Rasheen Ali season. But there's people who still love Mitchell and are willing to give 2/3 for him or something like that. So find somebody who would. And Jaden Reed, I really love the player and his versatility, but I don't know that he's going to get on the field enough. When people were healthy, his snap share was pretty low. He was not out there in many 2 wide receiver sets, and they have 2 good tight ends to use. So there's going to be some 2 wide receiver sets. He was very efficient with his touches. I would try to trade off the hype and see what you can do with that. But yeah, overall, I think, let's see, we've got them ranked number 7. I had them ranked exactly at 7. So, it's right in line. I think with a few tweaks, this is a team that could, be a contender, or this is a team where, maybe a couple things go wrong here or there, and we're looking at a bad season. I would want a better third quarterback than the AOC Minshew combo in a 10-team league, but that's hard to do, trading for quarterbacks sometimes. Love Ray Davis. Hold on to Ray Davis. Josh Allen had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. They don't want Josh Allen to have 15 rushing touchdowns this year. Trust me. And he's going to get the short yardage goal line work that they're not giving James Cook. He just doesn't get the short yardage goal line, even within the 10 yards. He doesn't really get much of it. Chuba's got some contingency upside should there be an injury to Brooks, or if Brooks is slow to start. Evan Hull, I think, underrated from that regard. Big injury last year, so we didn't get to see him. But he's behind one of the best high volume backs, and he can catch passes. He's athletic, Evan Hull. So there's definitely good things here, and then there's things where it's like, ooh, I could see that going wrong. So maybe I don't. Hopefully you guys transferred to tight end premium, but I know Godstrike doesn't like it because he's completely wrong about everything. So I don't know, like maybe a Likely or a Chig or a Kraft. I move off of one of those as well.
Yeah, we had the tight end premium talk. I think the last time we had a Godstrike league, so we won't go through that whole rigmarole again. But tight end premium does kind of add an extra element that I think some leagues lack. But we won't go through that. Just going off of what Brian said, with your quarterbacks, having a good third quarterback is important in general. It's especially important when Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray are your 1 and 2. Both guys have dealt with injuries. Both guys are, known as running quarterbacks. Both guys could very easily get hurt again, and pretty much would tank your season if you're having to start AOC or Gardner Minshew. So I would definitely look at adding a third quarterback. But overall, I think this team is built pretty well. I think it's a good mix of veteran players in there with some younger players that can definitely step up. I love Michael Pittman that he's got in there. Jamar Chase, of course, is an elite stud. Is he, a top 3 receiver there? You mentioned the running backs, Tony Pollard, Devin Singletary. I'm not in love with that. But again, running backs, I think, are the most replaceable. And obviously injuries happen throughout the season, so things change drastically with that position. So overall, this is a pretty solid roster. I had them at 10, and looking at the roster, I think maybe I was a little bit unfair.
You were wrong.
Yeah, I think maybe I was a little bit unfair with this team. I will say I went through it about 4 or 5 times, and I kept moving teams around. So, this team just happened to be the one that I put at 10, but it was very tough to rank these teams. Anything you wanted to add, Shane? Because you had them at 3. You actually love this team.
Yeah, so I may have been a little high on them on 3. That might have needed to be changed a little bit. But I just went and looked through the remaining teams that we have left to talk about. And I personally think they have a top 3 at worst, or at best, I guess, QB room. With their starting QBs, to be very, very clear, with Lamar and Kyler. And I'm super high on Kyler. I feel like everyone has just completely crapped on him for a year and a half at this point.
I love Kyler personally. I just, as an owner, I know the
and I haven't understood it. Like, when he's healthy, he's phenomenal. He doesn't play defense. He can't help on that end of the ball from a real football standpoint, and from a fantasy standpoint, he's phenomenal. So I think that was part of why I had them ranked so high. Ty Chandler is a great hold right now because, like I think Brian mentioned, if Aaron Jones goes down, Ty Chandler can easily step into that role and take a majority of the work and be great for you. I love Josh Downs personally. And then I think I hope I'm going to make you proud here, Jeff. I actually looked at draft capital for this league, and I think that's probably why I ranked them a little bit higher, is because they've got 2 firsts in 25 and 2 firsts in 26. So, and more picks sprinkled in throughout as well. So I really liked the draft capital aspect of this team, especially with how they're currently built. I don't know. I just felt really, really good about it.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, let's move on to team number 6.
Number 6.
Number 6 team, ranked as high as 5, as low as 7. It is Team Ronin, which is Godstrike's team. And Shane, this is your squad here.
Godstrike, I had you ranked as 7, and I'm going to tell you as an ambiguous 7 as I possibly could make it. Dak and Tua, I absolutely love. I really like Najee Harris, but I have way too many shares of him. Isaiah Pacheco's a solid RB2. Nico and Brandon Ayuk, I think, are both really good wide receivers, but even with Cooper Kupp there, I don't know if you've got a true wide receiver 1 just yet. Nico, Ayuk, Kupp, even Waddle can all get there, but you're going to have to play the game of who's going to be it this week. But, I mean, that depth is an embarrassment of riches, so you're good there. Sam Laporta is a great tight end. Derrick Henry's your other flex. Huh?
He'd be better if it was tight end premium, just saying.
He would be. I did almost rank you 10 because of who your QB3 is, and we're just going to leave him as he who shall not be named because I hate that guy. I honestly probably should have ranked you higher because you also have Travis Etienne, who is probably my favorite player in the NFL right now, outside of Baker Mayfield. And then you've got solid depth. And Kyle Pitts, if he can resurrect himself. Yeah, I mean, you've got a solid team. I had you at 7. I probably could have had you at 4. But you got the Deshaun Watson, bump down. So
Yeah, so I had this team at 7 as well, and I think it was really what you said about the wide receivers, right? Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, and even to an extent Cooper Kupp now. They all are great, talented receivers that are in situations that, obviously Waddle's got Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp has got Puka Nacua, Brandon Ayuk has got Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and even a little bit of George Kittle. Who am I missing? Nico Collins has got Tank Dell and now Stephon Diggs. So they're in really crowded situations where they're not going to be the guy every single week. So you're going to need to, hit those on the right weeks. You can't really count on them week in and week out. I think you need to have at least one receiver he's the guy every single week. He's going to give you that consistency every single week. Those guys are going to have huge games, and they're going to have games where they're not the number one priority.
They score 5 points, and
exactly.
You're like, what the hell happened?
It's going to be really tough. Cooper Kupp is the one that maybe he can get there. Maybe him and Stafford, go back to having breakfast together, and he can stay healthy and they do their thing. But the other ones, I think, are in situations where they're not going to be the number one option every single week, depending on matchups. So that's why I kind of knocked them down a little bit. But overall, solid roster. In a 10-team league, I always look at the starters and see, is there any players that are not like startable quality? And I don't think that he has any guys that are not startable quality. And as you mentioned, he's got Travis Etienne on his bench that probably should be starting, probably over Najee Harris or even Isaiah Pacheco.
I'd probably start him over Pacheco just because he's got the pass catching upside that Pacheco doesn't.
Absolutely. Brian, anything you wanted to chime in here with this team?
I'd like my friend Godstrike to know that I ranked it 5, because, and I think you got a little bit of a bias bump because you have some my guys on this roster. Like, I am a Nico freak. I'm an Ayuk truther. I'm a Waddle truther. The gang is right? Like things could break either way for a couple of those guys. But like also Deebo could get traded after June 1st and, boom, right? Or you could say, well, the Texans got Diggs because, hey, they listen, here's your 1-year prove-it deal where, you're better than Noah Brown and Robert Woods, but you might still be the third receiver and, boom, Nico's Nico. Waddle on a per route basis is very good.
I love Waddle.
The thing is, between Tyreek being there and him always being in the blue tent, it's been hard to really fall in love with Waddle or keep the love alive.
Yeah.
Ryan Heath did a good breakdown of some per route numbers on Waddle that look really promising. And so if he can stay out of the tent, he'll be good. And then we've got Kamani Vidal, which, I know he's America's sleeper now, but I was on him before it was cool. You are disappointing me a little bit in acknowledging the continued existence of Quintez Cephas and Alec Pierce. So I think K-Cat was onto something about trying to package one of the tight ends and trying to improve at wide receiver. I would be careful and probably move off one of the bigger ticket running backs like Najee or Derrick Henry. Again, it's a balance between you want like 1 million running backs on your roster in case something happens and they become tradable or startable. But also it's like you don't want like a lot of fragile running backs on your roster. So if you could figure out a way to maybe spin off like Thielen and a tight end and get like a third and a wide receiver back, or, add a little bit of running back depth that's a little younger, I would love that. But yeah, a lot of my guys. So you got a bump there. Yeah.
Yeah. And just funny story on Quintez Cephas. Our show on Wednesday night, it was me and Doc and Ryan, and we were talking about players that get the bump from like one spectacular catch in the preseason. And I brought up Quintez Cephas, who had that one-handed catch. They caught a still of him. It appears that he's like 20 feet off the ground with a one-handed catch in his rookie season, and how he's basically built a career in the NFL on this. And I thought he was out of the NFL, and I mentioned that. And then the very next day, I get an alert that he was cut from the team that he was playing for. And now here he is again on this roster. I just found it funny that I mentioned Quintez Cephas, and now I'm kind of seeing him everywhere. So, but Cephas at this point, he's cuttable. His one-handed catch in the preseason was a long time ago. He's no longer rosterable, so I would definitely drop Quintez Cephas. But everything else that y'all said, makes a lot of sense. And, I think this is a pretty good roster. Again, we've mentioned it a few times tonight. 10-team leagues, it's hard to rank these teams because they're, unless you have a terrible owner that just doesn't know what he's doing, pretty much any team is going to be able to compete in a 10-team league. So good breakdown, gentlemen. All right, we are up to team number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5 team ranked as high as 4 and as low as 9. It is KCat 1111. And Brian, this is your squad.
I don't know. I think I would want to watch film with Godstrike in the blue room. It sounds fun. Yeah. All right. KCat 1111 1111. Angel numbers. Make a wish. You've got very good starters. A little bit of age there with Diggs and Allen, but again, very good starters. We hope Godwin moving into the slot improves again, and that would improve his trade value as well. I have my concerns because McMillan and Trey Palmer are not really outside receivers in the sense that you really want them out there on the outside a lot. So I worry about that. We've got solid 3 QB depth. The bench is a little weak, a little meh for a 10-teamer. Good tight end depth, but a little old also in that tight end depth. I would trade from your strength at quarterback or tight end, but especially tight end, right? Like quarterbacks, you want to hold on to them. They're very valuable in super flex. You don't just trade them willy-nilly. A lot of dynasty folks will tell you, like, you don't trade an elite player to get 1 million pieces in depth, right? Like, you keep the elite player. That's what you want. However, to spice it up, I would entertain thinking about trading Jalen Hurts. I think within the range of outcomes is things go really well in Philadelphia. He's healthy, new offensive coordinator. Barkley takes some of the load off of him, et cetera, right? I think it could go in another direction. Barkley maybe takes a little too much of the goal line work away. The offense is a little, slow to start with a new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, who, let's face it, doesn't have a great track record as an offensive coordinator. And, running quarterbacks, they're great. But if you look at when they fall off sooner. So it's like you want the running quarterback in the beginning of their career, but then you want to pivot to your Joe Burrows and your more pocket passers who still have a little bit of movement to them. So that's something to think about. I would trade one of the older wide receivers if I could, get a little young or some picks back. And yeah, so I think this is a very good team. I would just want to have it get on that conveyor belt where you're never rebuilding. So you're you're getting multiple pieces, you're getting a little bit younger, you're getting picks while you're also competing with those very good starters. When I look at a team that has, Mahomes and JT and Garrett Wilson and Justin Jefferson and Travis Kelce, like, my pants start to get tight, right? Like, that's a roster that I want to take over. But also, spin off James Conner at this point in the offseason, right? Trey Benson could take over that backfield sooner rather than later. He's 29 and a history of playing 12 or 13 games anyway. I'd probably get rid of him now. Same thing with Jamal Williams. Can you get a third for Jamal Williams in this league? Then get a third for Jamal Williams, right? And then just again, kind of try to improve with a few more multiple pieces on that bench. I would trade one of Kittle or Goddard, both neither young but both valuable, especially if it's a tight end premium league, which of course it should be. And you could have a really golden ticket there in Jermaine Burton, because if Higgins has injury this year, or for whatever reason Burton just plays better, which probably less likely, but very likely Higgins gone in 2025. So you could have a golden ticket there with Burton, because he's just about as good as some of these other outside wide receivers that got drafted this year. He just fell because of the off the field stuff, which doesn't count for fantasy points.
Yep, fair enough. Yeah, so I had this team ranked the highest. I had him number 4 overall, and it's from those players you mentioned there, right? Because you got at least 4, if not 5 guys that could finish number 1 at their position. You got Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson. Maybe Travis Kelce's years of getting the number 1 overall is behind him, but at worst he's probably top 3. Garrett Wilson is a guy who's coming up. Then you got your older guys mixed in with Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin. You mentioned James Conner. So the top of this roster, the starting lineup of this roster is super, super solid. And because of their value, you could make a ton of moves if you wanted to improve your depth, pick up some draft pieces, or you want to just go for it this year. So I love this team, and I think this got a lot of potential with what they can do with these pieces on their roster. What about you, Shane? What are your thoughts here?
Okay, so I might have fucked up.
Okay.
Because I had this team at 9, and it was purely because when I first glanced at this team, they're old as shit. But they have a top 2 quarterback room in Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, and a top 1 or 2, 3 maybe wide receiver room, at least for the starting wide receiver position of Justin Jefferson and Garrett Wilson. But I'm going to blame it on age, and I'm going to blame it on I think what Brian described as a lack of depth. Like DeAndre Swift in Chicago, I love Swift, but I have no idea what he's going to look like in Chicago. Stevenson in New England is not I don't think I have any shares of Ramondre Stevenson, maybe 1 in all of my dynasty teams. And then you've got some ambiguous wide receivers that have upside, but nothing that screams to me like, hey, I can be a wide receiver 1 on my team anytime soon. I might have missed Kittle on the bench, but I would trade Kittle, honestly. I agree with Brian there. I would try and trade Kittle. And your taxi squad is pretty solid. But yeah, I think I overvalued in my evaluation the age initially, especially with the QB room and the wide receiver duo that you have. So, but again, going back to my initial statement at the very beginning of the show, 3 through 9 could easily have been interchanged pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
So the age part is probably why I pushed them down.
And let's just be honest, Shane. You got baby number 4 coming on, so that may have something to do with it as well. Maybe
yeah.
Yeah, it's life's a little different. You got that baby coming, so yeah, that's maybe you overlooked a few things there.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a solid roster overall. I think they got some great pieces. All right, let's go ahead and jump into number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4 squad ranked as high as 4 and as low as 8. It is regular season rock star. And Shane, this is your squad.
Okay, this team is old as shit. Kirk Cousins, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Smith doesn't count. He's young. Darren Waller, who I think has retired. Who knows? Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, George Pickens doesn't count. Jaden Daniels looks like your QB2. You don't actually have the slot filled in on our screenshots, but I would go with Jaden Daniels. I think he's got a ton of upside with the rushing floor and probably landed in the second best situation, maybe third best if you want to throw the Vikings in there. I wouldn't necessarily fight you. You've got a QB3 in Russell Wilson. I like your QB4 a lot. Jeff is probably going to roll his eyes. But I think Sam Howell will start games this season for you. So that's a solid option to have on your bench. But even your depth is old, like Raheem Mostert, Ezekiel Elliott, Nick Chubb. Jesus Christ, man. Do you live in a retirement home? Chase Brown is young. Elijah Mitchell's kind of in the middle. Juju Smith-Schuster at this point is old, but somehow is still young. I think he might be 27. Noah Brown got replaced. Rondale Moore. Who knows? I love Jahan Dotson. And then Michael Mayer. Pour one out for him. Xavier Legette is on your taxi squad, and I think he's got potential. It'll really depend on the Carolina coaching staff, who I've liked everything that I've heard, and I'm local to the team. I live about 2 hours from Charlotte, so I think he's got potential, but who knows? Putting him on your taxi squad is probably good. And you've got good draft capital. You've got a couple seconds, couple thirds, and multiple years going. So you've got the potential to get younger, but good God, man, your team is about to go into the coffin.
So whoever team this is, Shane just went on and on about how old it is. Go back to watch our show from Wednesday night. We had the doc on. He's our injury analyst over at Going for Two, and he's an adamant proponent of getting those old guys because you win championships with the old guys, right? And if you look at this roster, the screenshot that I have here, that little star next to his name means that he is the league champion from last year. So yes, this team is older, but this goes to prove Doc's point that sometimes
I won't argue with Doc's point either.
Yeah, it's you win the chips with the older guys, but you do want to have some stuff sort of in the pipeline because it's going to come crashing down really hard
quick.
So if you don't have that draft capital, you might win a championship, maybe one more, but these guys are going to get old quick and retire, and then you're going to be left kind of out in the cold. Brian, you put in the chat there about Doc, hoping that Doc isn't watching. What are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, so if I look at my notes on regular season Rockstar, which I love that name because it's like
accurate name.
I'm missing the playoffs. I'm just here to have fun, right? So I think we have mostly solid starters, but definitely some age. That was my note on that. The quarterback depth is not again great. It's a question again of quantity versus quality. I saw some age on the bench, especially with the running backs. It's kind of mid, kind of destined for the middle. Pretty good draft capital though. So what I would do if I were that team is try to pivot off some of that age, right? And also at the same time, you do have some picks in the cupboard so that, say it's week 12 or whatever, you've got a couple injuries, you've got to buy, guys on buys because there's like 6 teams on buy or something week 12, and you're sniffing, the top 2 you want to buy for the season, like where you skip the first round of the playoffs. That's when you take that pick, that second that you got for somebody old now, and then add it to something else, and then boom, you got like your starting running back for the stretch run and that sort of thing. So you can keep that gold star, but still move off some of that age.
Yeah, I like that call, and I did that in my home league just to quickly kind of mention that. It was the beginning of December where I went out and I was sort of middle of the pack, but I could tell if I could just get some running backs, I'd be good to go. And I moved some picks, and I ended up getting Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry for the stretch run in December and rode them to a championship. And I had an older roster similar to this, but those 2 running backs pushed me over the top. So I like that call. I like, moving some of the age now, getting some of those second-round picks so you don't really lose the capital, and then kind of see where you're at in week 12, week 13, and see if you want to make a move to go for it all or not. So good stuff. All right, let's move on to team number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 team was pretty much universal as far as where it was ranked, as high as 3, as low as 4. So pretty much all of us agreed that he's kind of in this range here. It is Team Meadowlands, and Brian, this is your squad.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the profile pic of what appears to be a Giants logo with the Meadowlands team name, and you're warming the cockles of my heart. I am not a Giants fan, however, I live minutes from the Meadowlands. Can even smell the swamp sometimes. But yeah, I don't know if you're a Jersey guy or whatever, but Jersey person. But yeah, love it, love Meadow. Also, the name of a protest song against South African apartheid. That's really, really cool kind of 50s rock kind of vibe to it. Anywho, you got good starters. I love Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is my guy. He is going to break fantasy this year. Love it, love it, love it.
If you
You
can
got
stay
sort
healthy.
you got sort of a quasi, zero RB bench, which I like to see. It's kind of how I like to build. You've got good wide receivers on your bench depth. Quarterback depth feels a little thin, but again, not the worst, and is fixable with trades. Your tight ends are good. If I'm looking to move people in this roster, what pops off the page to me is Montgomery and T. Higgins. And so Montgomery, love him. He's in a productive offense. He's gonna eat, but I think some of those touches are going to start to lean a little bit more towards Gibbs' way. He doesn't offer too much as a pass catcher, and he is 27 now, I think 26. So, kind of a good candidate that has enough name value on a good offense that just had a good year that may not repeat. And so it might be a guy to move off of. And Higgins, I would move off of, because I think between people knowing he's connected to Burrow and also wish casting him as a wide receiver one somewhere else, I think you can get off that ride at a pretty good price, and then and not feel too bad if he hits somewhere else on another team, because you got a good price for it. So that's something that I would do. You've got pretty intact draft capital, which of course I like to see, because I'm kind of a draft capital lover, I guess. Chan is a guy who I've been on a roller coaster ride with, and since he was a prospect. Explosive. He can win you a week, right? But a lot of his production came early in good weather against bad teams. He showed that durability concerns and therefore touch count concerns are warranted. He won't need a lot of touches because he's really efficient, but he's going to need more than 8 to 10. Jalen Wright's a really good running back that I love. So, he's another guy who's super good name value, super high trade value. Might be interesting to see what you can get. Just angle him out there, see what you can get for him, because it could go the other way. Davids is like a lottery ticket at this point. Like, listen, you might as well hold him because you're only getting a fourth or a third for him, and see what happens. Khalil Herbert could get traded to Dallas or somewhere else. His contract is up in Chicago. They got a backfield that they like. They didn't draft him, 6th-round capital anyway. He might get traded and therefore get a value spike. I think Jalen Warren is very interesting. We'll see what Arthur Smith is doing in Pittsburgh, but we know that he can be explosive and efficient. Kendre Miller is sneaky right now. He's going to lead New Orleans in rushing yards. I think Kamara is going to be like a lot of pass catching involved there, whereas Miller, I think, is going to get a lot of the rushes. Neighbors, elite prospects. So you've got a lot of good stuff going on here. Just a couple tweaks that I would make, like I said. And you have my boy Rasheen Ali, about to Wally Pipp, Keaton Mitchell, and an old flame of mine, Izzy Abanikanda. We'll see what happens there, but yeah.
Yeah, just to go back to your T. Higgins potential trade idea, it makes it easier to trade T. Higgins when you have Malik Neighbors sitting on your bench currently. You also have Jalen Polk and JSN, who I think will have a big step forward this year. So trading T. Higgins makes a lot of sense because you've already got guys that you can plug into your lineup already. If you can get value for T. Higgins now, I would definitely do that. I agree with Brian 100% there. What about you, Shane? What are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I was the one that had you at 4. Sorry, and I think the main factor in that is, again, you kind of got screwed by the circumstance of the draft and free agency with your QB3 not existing currently, with Justin Fields looking like QB2 in Pittsburgh, and then lacking that true depth at running back. Like Jeff just mentioned, your wide receiver depth is great. Polk, Neighbors, Cortland Sutton, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Tight end, you've got Ben Sinnott and David Njoku. Like those are solid depth pieces. But then your best depth piece from a running back standpoint is David Montgomery, and then maybe Jalen Warren and Samaje Perine. But those are some real big question marks. So that's probably what puts you down at 4. And sorry, Brian, I'm not the biggest Anthony Richardson guy because of his health. So I will totally eat that crow if he plays an entire season. But that was probably why I had him 4 instead of 3. And I just felt weird. Like we all had the same 1 and 2, I think. And I was like, I can't do 3 in a row. So I had to make one different.
You had to be different. Fair enough. Yep.
Real hard science going into these rankings. Yep.
Yeah. As you mentioned, we'll get to team number 2.
Number 2.
Number 2 team was unanimous. We all had this team at number 2. It is Bijan Pupon, and it is your team, Shane.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would probably put this team, like from their QB duo, at number 4, maybe number 5. Yeah, I'd put this at 4, and the team we just did it at 5 with Joe Burrow and Caleb Williams. And then Jordan Love is your QB3 is like butter on the cake, icing on the cake. I don't know what the fuck I was saying. Butter. I'm sorry.
Butter on the cake. I love it. Let's pick up our own things.
And then Will Levis is a QB4. Like that's a solid QB room. Even if you don't believe in Will Levis, like no one on the roster is going to surpass him. And I think, and the reason I say that is because I think Tannehill is officially no longer on the roster. At least he's not in sleeper. And then your running back room, you've got Bijan Robinson, Kenneth Walker, 2 great running backs. DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr. I was a Colts fan as a kid because of Peyton Manning, so I obviously love Marvin Harrison Sr. Marvin Harrison Jr. is phenomenal. I think Pat Freiermuth will be solid for you. Rashee Rice, good Lord, just lock him in a room until camp and then make sure that he goes back to that room every day after camp. Javonte Williams is your RB3. I think is perfect. Javonte Williams is a huge buy for me this offseason, and I have never really been a Javonte Williams guy, but the opportunity is there, especially with a rookie quarterback. Christian Watson, I think, is a great flex play, so you got that locked up. You have one of my favorite running back handcuffs in Tank Bigsby. And then you've got Brian Thomas, Elijah Moore, Josh Palmer, I think is kind of being slept on. Even with Ladd McConkey there, like the wide receiver 1 role is wide open. The wide receiver 2 role is probably wide open too. And you still have Justin Herbert as a quarterback. And then Cade Otton, honestly, I would probably start Cade over Freiermuth. But either way, those 2 guys are interchangeable for me. And then your taxi squad is freaking solid too. Drake May, good Lord, you've got QBs for days. And that's how you should do it in Superflex. Marshawn Lloyd and Adonai Mitchell, like this is just a really solidly built, well-balanced team with QB depth in Superflex. Like I don't know. The flaw I think you have is just your running back depth, and that's it. But you've got enough in the starting lineup that you're solid.
Yeah, this was a real solid roster and very hard for me to determine if I wanted to put him at 1 or 2. And just to go on to that taxi squad, I wanted to mention Marshawn Lloyd, who I think Brian mentioned earlier. There's the potential that he plays the Aaron Jones role in that offense, and he's a lot more than what people are kind of predicting him to be. Because in rookie drafts right now, I think there's a clear-cut top 2 running backs, Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson. And then it gets cloudy after that. Is it Blake Corum? Is it Jalen Wright? For me, it's Marshawn Lloyd. And I think opportunity here with this team, which the Packers have shown in the past, they want to have a split backfield. They tried doing it with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. It didn't quite work out with Dillon. Now they got Josh Jacobs. I think they want to have Marshawn Lloyd mixed in there into the offense. So I do think they want to have a thunder and lightning sort of vibe. And I think Marshawn Lloyd's value, I think, is a little bit higher than what he's being drafted at. So I love that draft there, that draft pick. Top of the roster is great. Like you mentioned, you got Joe Burrow, you got the rookie Caleb Williams, Bijan Robinson. I think somebody in the chat said that this team has lost for 4 years straight to get this team. Well, you know what? I think it worked out. I think you did pretty solid with what the picks you made, and I think this team looks pretty good. Obviously, we had them ranked at number 2. Brian, anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah. So my concern is the wide receivers. I think we have a league that starts 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers. So theoretically, they're of equal weight. But with 3 WRT flexes and tight ends not being premium, it's a potentially start 5 wide receiver league, right? Which is, you probably want to do more wide receivers than running backs in that total of 5 spaces. Because of what happens with running backs and wide receivers. And I love DJ Moore, right? But historically, wide receivers don't do well with rookie quarterbacks, even special ones. And we've got Keenan Allen and Dunze there. MHJ is very solid. I'm sure he'll be fine, but is a rookie. May start slow. Technically, it's a black box. It's a mystery, right? Rashid Rice suspended for some of the year, and to be honest, even before the suspension, I was lower than consensus on him. A lot of manufactured touches, and now also the presence of Worthy and Hollywood Brown. But I was lower on him even before all that. And Christian Watson, again, a player that I really like and I want to like more, but is so far boom bust and has to work on hamstring injuries. Where is the reliable wide receiver in that bunch? That you really want as like your flag plant wide receiver 1 on this team? I don't know that you have one, and that could be an issue. Again, I look at this as a potentially start 5 wide receiver league, and I don't know that that's in the best shape. But I mean, what we're doing here is splitting hairs on a very good roster that all of us had ranked number 2. Yeah.
Agreed. Great stuff. All right, before we get to the number 1 team, we have currently 120-ish people viewing. I wanted to just real quick plug what it is we're actually doing here. So this is what we call a personal league podcast, and you can get one for your league. It's basically an entire hour plus dedicated to your league. It ends up being about $8 a person in a 12-man league. It's $100 total. If you divide it up with your entry fees, you can get one for your league. It's if you just visit goingfor2.com/PLP. You can pick the date you want us to do it, and then obviously reserve your spot. I will say that we are filling up pretty fast. I think 3 weeks are already gone in July. We've already got 2 weeks in August filled up. So if you want to get one of these done, go do so now. Again, that link is goingfor2.com/PLP, which stands for Personal League Podcast. Now let's get to number 1. Number one team ranked unanimously at number 1. It is Team 330. And Brian, this is your squad. We'll all kind of talk about this team a little bit, but Brian, give us your breakdown.
All right. So first of all, I have to talk to the almost genius with the naming of this team, right? This person's username, folks, is Team 330. That's their @ So therefore, had they not changed their display name to 330, their name would be Team 330 in Sleeper. And that would be even better. But if you're following still, let's talk about the number 1 ranked team here. So, I mean, great starters, some very good young pieces. A little bit with the bench quarterback and bench wide receivers. I'd like to see them better in a 10-team league. You've got the 2 first, though, on top of that. I know this is going to sound whatever, right? But you've got Brees and Gibbs. And I'm thinking to myself, in a potentially start 5 wide receiver, no tight end premium league, do I want that much value in the running back position? Right? Like, I know it sounds weird, but it's almost like I only want to carry one really super high-end running back on a roster like this. and some of the rest being those sort of like zero RBs and the pass catchers and that sort of thing. Like the value you could get for a Brees or a Gibbs, and then plug that into draft capital and wide receivers and improving a little bit of quarterback depth, this team would be just, over the top special and awesome. But, I mean, when you go down the roster and you look at the Sun God and Drake London, who I think is in for a bigger year this year, we all love Stroud. I think there's a little too much steam on Stroud, but nobody wants to hear that. But again, he's awesome anyway. Zay Flowers has some good spike weeks. I think Kincaid is a very good tight end. I seem to be higher than consensus. I'm also higher than consensus on T-Law. Again, Derek Carr could be a fine quarterback 3, or he could be injured, or it could be Spencer Rattler's job in week 6, right? I think the Mavericks did pretty well there for something, because Shane is excited. I know he's not excited about Derek Carr. McCarthy, he's a mystery box. He's a black box. He's a rookie. Could go really well, could go badly. And Kenny Pickett is a backup that probably isn't going to see the field much. So, I'd want a little bit better quarterback on my bench. But the good news is it's May, right? And I think, solid rookie running backs, especially Benson and Wright. Mingo in a 10-team league, I don't think there's a reason to really carry Mingo. Charbonnet, I do like. Higher than consensus, probably has some contingent upside. No reason to carry Chase Claypool in a 10-team league. Jalen Tolbert's going to be sneaky, y'all. Brandon Cooks, a year older. They really only added in the draft, I think, 6th-rounder Ryan Flournoy, who is good, but he's a 6th-rounder from Southeast Missouri who's an older prospect. So, grain of salt. It could be Tolbert's year. He was starting to outsnap Michael Gallup toward the end of the year. That's as much as an indictment on Michael Gallup as it is on how the team is feeling about Jalen Tolbert's development. Could be sneaky there. I'm a JMO guy, definitely above consensus. The way the roster's shaking out, he's probably going to get more volume than he did last year. And again, some spike weeks from Shaheed, some pass catching from Bucky Irvin. I just want to say real quick, while I have the mic, to the extent possible, as the season approaches, you want the running backs, personally, this is what I do, the running backs off your taxi and the wide receivers and tight ends on the taxi, because the running backs are going to be the guys who, it's time for them to play because they're next man up. And you just wasted a taxi spot by having him there, and now you have to take him off. Yeah. It's less likely that like the Jalen McMillans of the world are going to be used early in the season, right? So they're safer to put on a taxi squad, or like AJ Barner and Eric All, in the 5th round as tight ends. I want my running backs usable on the roster, or tradable on the roster, and not on the taxi squad.
Very good point. And that's assuming, of course, that you can't move players in and off taxi. I am in some leagues where you are able to move them. Now, the standard basically is once they're on and the season starts, you can't move them on and off. But there are some leagues that I played in where you can. It treats them more like a practice squad player that can be activated. But in a standard style taxi squad, yeah, I agree with Brian. Put your running backs on your active roster because there's a better chance that they might actually be valuable for you during the season. Shane, you look pretty excited over there. I haven't been able to watch the game, but I'm assuming the Dallas Mavericks won.
Mavericks win 117-115.
Good stuff.
So
you want to break down this top ranked team here?
Yeah, I'm real happy now. So this to me is the other top 3 QB room and Stroud and Trevor Lawrence. Brian, I'm with you on T-Law. I'm higher than consensus, and that's probably my Jags fandom coming out a little bit. But my concern with them going forward is their wide receiver room. Do they truly have that wide receiver 1? Can Brian Thomas Jr. step up and be that? Can Gabe Davis, who, if I remember correctly, is on this roster, step up and be that person? Rome Odunze, I'm not an Odunze guy, but with this team and the depth that you have, he's a perfect pick in your rookie draft because I don't see a spot where he should necessarily crack it this year, but going forward, he's the perfect pick because that sunk cost is already assumed in that draft pick. You've got Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid, who are 2 top dynasty tight ends. Kincaid has room for massive upside this year with whatever the hell Buffalo is doing with their wide receiver room. And then the one player I think I want to point out on this roster that I may have missed because of the end of the game, sorry, Brian, was Jalen Wright. I know Raheem Mostert is there. I know Devin Ashan is there. But Jalen Wright just feels like a smash at RB in the second round of rookie drafts, and he's on this roster. A lot of people had him as RB1. A lot of people had 6 other different people at RB1 in this class pre-draft. But I think he landed at a good spot, especially from a dynasty perspective, because Raheem Mostert, I think, is 31 at this point. He's not going to be on the team to a relevant tune for, I think, much longer. And then it will be Ashan and Wright here. So I really like him. Trey Benson is in a similar situation, I think, where, yes, James Conner's there this year, but then going forward, like, it could very easily and should very easily be Benson's room. So I really like this team. Obviously, we all had him ranked as 1.
Yeah, I love it. I'm not going to add anything. Y'all guys pretty much covered it. I'm going to just jump in. We usually do our dark horse towards the end of the podcast. And I'll kick it off. I know Shane was kind of watching the game there, so I'll give him a chance to sort of look at the teams, pick out his dark horse. But usually I wait till last, and by the time we get to my pick, it's already been taken. So I'm going to take everybody's thunder, and I'm going to pick my dark horse. We had this team ranked at, I believe, number 6 overall. I actually had him at number 7, but I'm going with the man of the hour, Godstrike, Ronan, the team that we broke down. With the squad that he has, Dak Prescott, Najee Harris, Isaiah Pacheco, those receivers that we mentioned that are all sort of the receiver 2 on their team, but they can all pop off and be receiver 1 any week with Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, and Jalen Waddle. Tight end premium, Laporta would be a lot better, but even without the premium, I think Laporta is probably the best, the Dynasty tight end 1 right now. So I think I'm taking him as my dark horse here for this season. I do think his team is pretty solid top to bottom. What about you, Brian? What do you got for your dark horse squad?
So I'm looking at this team's name, and for whatever reason, when I look at it, my brain goes to the scene in Wedding Crashers, where the mother is trying to seduce one of them. She's like, "Call me Kitty Cat." It's K-Cat 1111. Angel numbers make a wish. The horse isn't too dark, especially for this year. They were just in the middle of the pack as far as who we want to take over. But when I look at a team that has Mahomes, JT, J-Jeff, Garrett Wilson, right? Kelsey, Diggs, Keenan Allen, Godwin, Matthew Stafford, Swift, Ramondre, gets a little thin after that, but then Kittle and Goddard as backup tight end. Like, that's a team that can compete. And that's a team that's got trade pieces, and that's kind of what you want in Dynasty, right? So yeah, Kitty Cat. It's you're the dark horse.
Yeah, for the record, I would have had him in my dark horse, but I ranked him at 4. So I don't know if I can call him a dark horse if I had him that high. Because that team, I love that team for sure.
Damn it,
Shane,
Jeff! Why did you have to say that? So I'm gonna go on a bit of a long-winded rant here. I don't know if rant's the right word, and I don't know how long-winded it'll be, but Godstrike was probably going to be one of mine. Jeff took that, so I won't pick them. And then Jeff just mentioned that he had the team ranked at 4, so he couldn't necessarily pick them as a dark horse. So I thought about picking Basement Warriors, who I had ranked at 3, but they came in at 7, but that feels like cheating. So I'm going to pivot to the third team that I think will actually stick as a dark horse, and that's going to be TK Wood. With Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, like, that's a solid QB1, QB2 punch, and Josh Allen's going to have to play hero ball pretty much all year. You've got a ton of running back depth that you could move around to strengthen the roster. Amari Cooper and Christian Kirk. I think that's probably your biggest question mark, but you've got Mark Andrews, even though it's not tight end premium. You don't necessarily have that true wide receiver 1, and that'd be the area that I would look to improve to really push you into this realm. And I think what kind of – okay, I had the wrong team. I thought they had 2 firsts. I thought you had the draft capital to potentially move, but you do have Marquise Brown down there. But that I still think that applies where you need that true guy that you can say, hey, this is my wide receiver 1. He's gonna get me 18 to 20 points a week, and I don't even have to think about it. So I'll go TK Wood as my dark horse.
All right, good stuff. All right, guys, that's a wrap. I hope everybody in the chat that joined us or that's listening to us after the fact enjoyed the show. We do these quite often during the year, and if anybody in your league, in this league has other leagues and they want to do it for that league as well, again, that URL is goingfor2.com/PLP. Really simple to sign up. But before we get out of here, we're going to do a quick round robin. Just guys, give me your Twitter handle, and if you want to plug anything, plug your show, plug your leagues. Whatever you want to do. Shane, we'll go to you first.
Cool. Follow me on Twitter at FFShaneB. Follow the tournament at Polly's Playoff and sign up at pollysplayoff.com.
Awesome. Brian?
Yeah, at FFJunkie_ on the Twitters. On this YouTube channel, you can find me usually on Saturday nights at 7:30 Eastern with Josh doing a Dynasty podcast called Dynasty Saturday Night 5. We use lists of 5 as our way of, kind of talking about the topic. Last week or last time we did it, it was 5 ambiguous backfields, right? Also do an audio-only podcast called Dynasty Fever, at Dynasty Fever Pod on Twitter. It's audio only. It's midweek. It's not as regular as DSN 5 sometimes because life gets lifey. And also, my first article on Fantasy Pros dropped, and that felt good. It's not much, but it's a big company, and they, hired little old me to, churn out some articles. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Good stuff. All right, fellas. As always, you could find me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. I wanted to thank Godstrike and everyone in the chat that joined and anybody in this league. Thank you for your purchase. Godstrike, I know I see your comment there in the chat that we'll see you in July because the 3 weeks in July that are booked up are from Godstrike. He already booked 3 leagues in July. So if you want to get one of these for your league, I suggest getting there as soon as possible because every single year it happens where we get into August and I get DMs like, hey, you got any more spots open for the PLPs? And unfortunately, by that time, we're all booked up. I've tried in the years past to cram in as many as I could before the season starts. But sometimes I have to turn people away and say, sorry, we just couldn't get you in this year. Maybe we'll get you in next year. So right now is the best time to go sign up. Again, goingfor2.com/PLP. For Brian, for Shane, I'm Jeff, and we hope to see y'all next year.